From the Zoomerplex in historic Liberty Village, The Zoomer, hosted by Marissa Lennox.
Welcome to The Zoomer, I'm Marissa Lennox. We're starting today's show asking, what is identity theft? Back in the day, identity was primarily linked to your social insurance number. But in today's digital world, identity encompasses much more, from your social media profiles to the websites you visit and even your biometric data. We're going to get into all of this on today's show, but first I wanted to do a little experiment. We've got our Zoomer News videographer Darren Maharaj here. He's on board to show us just how vulnerable your online identity can be. And for this experiment, we've actually taken precautions to blur out or change some of the sensitive information. All right, take a look at this. It's a seemingly harmless Facebook profile, right? On this Facebook profile, we have a name, Darren Maharaj. Now, with that name, we can do a quick search on LinkedIn. Here we have Darren's profile. Scroll down, his employment history, education, connections to his professional network. Let's jump back to Facebook. Here are Darren's public photos. Here's a recent post with some friends and a location, which we've actually blurred. But now we know where Darren spends his free time. Now let's look at his friends list. Here are some with the same last name, possibly family. With a couple more clicks, we could potentially map out Darren's family tree, finding more targets for information. From just one person's Facebook profile, we've managed to uncover a wealth of information, from their employment history to their social circles, even their whereabouts. This is a reminder to be so careful when sharing personal information online. All right, let's turn to the panel for more. Welcome to you all. Detective, how much damage could someone do with just that information?
Your identity is the gateway to everything for you. I mean, identity theft can result in basically every fraud there is, whether it be mortgage fraud, romance fraud, investment fraud. And I think what that demonstration does more than anything is that unless we're shutting everything off and living in a cave, that information is out there. Like, there's no way we can stop that information from being out there. If we're on social media, if we're on any websites or anything like that, it's out there. And you have to realize that. And you have to be even more wary and suspicious and vigilant on what's coming into you, because you've already put that information out there. We all have. It's what is being used for and sent back to you. To capture you in these frauds.
So is there a way to find balance here? Is there a way to still be connected online while also protecting your personal identity?
I think it's really important that what you think about is your personas. Are you the same person in the physical world as you are in the virtual world? Because as that demonstration showed us, it's just so easy to take different pieces of information, aggregate it together, and get kind of a very fulsome image of someone. And one other piece of data that we haven't even spoken about is data from hacked and breached sites as well. We hear about banks that get breached. We hear about payment terminals that get breached. We hear about points cards that get breached. So now I know what you're buying. Now I know which hotels you stay at. I know which bank you use. And when you start taking all that stuff and aggregating it, it creates a pretty intrusive picture. That's why I tell people the balance is really important, understanding that the information might actually get hacked, it might actually get out there. Yeah. So you really want to think about the type of information you're giving to vendors and putting online.
Carmi, who do identity thieves go after? Like, what is it that makes someone vulnerable? Would Tom Cruise or any other A-list celebrity be vulnerable? And I think understanding the answer to this is key to protecting our identity.
Yeah, the danger here, Marissa, is that all of us assume that no one would be interested in us. You know, I'm not a Tom Cruise, I'm not rich and famous, and so why would a cyber criminal have any interest in me? And I think that's the attitude that gets us into trouble, because we think that we're somehow invulnerable because of our anonymity, because we're just regular people. But the sad reality is that everybody's data has a dollar figure attached to it in the cyber criminal world. And so we are all then targets, and we make ourselves even more vulnerable by assuming that we're not. So, you know, there is no sort of magic line, you know, below the radar that we are somehow protected because we're anonymous. The reality is that all of our data is potentially targetable. And look around the room, look to your left, look to your right. All of us have been targeted before, and I'm pretty sure all of us are not as famous as Tom Cruise.
So if we're all vulnerable, Amanda, then what would be the reason why someone perhaps hasn't been targeted?
I mean, the only way you would not be targeted is to literally not be online at all.
So it's just a matter of time?
I think it's not only just a matter of time. I think it's really about being informed and being an advocate for yourself and being an empowered user as much as you can, and using, products and services that, are really going to have your best interest at heart. Things that will monitor your activity, on the dark web, things that will give you alerts. So for example, if you have an email on a dark web, there are services like InfoDefender, such as, that provide an alert, where an alert will pop up on your phone and say, we found your email on the dark web, and here's how you can resolve that. So, nobody thinks to themselves, oh, I'm gonna be the person that gets hacked, or I'm gonna be the person that this happens to. I always kind of think of it, it's like, God forbid, like a car accident. You never think it's gonna happen, but you still buy insurance.
Yeah. Anna, I want to bring you in here because I see you nodding. Identity theft keeps getting worse, and when something keeps getting worse, I think it's worth asking why.
I couldn't agree with you more. When I was privacy commissioner, victims of identity theft would come to me, and they would say, oh my God, I didn't commit those acts. I didn't do these things or buy these things. And I would, of course, say I'm going to help them clear their name. But the first thing I would say is go to the police and file an occurrence report, something to substantiate your claim that your privacy and your identity has been stolen. And then I would work with them to do this. So we are in this world of AI, which is expanding dramatically, and all the surveillance activities taking place online. Our information is at risk. And my fear is this is going to grow. That's why people have to take measures, learn about how to encrypt their data and other measures, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, because this is not something that's going away, but it's critical. Privacy and your identity is essential. You have to protect it.
That's a great segue to our next conversation. We're going to take a pause here on the other side, the terrifying scam that uses your loved one's voice. Next. Welcome back. What if you received a frantic call from a loved one seeking urgent help? Now consider that the voice on the other end might not be theirs. It could be AI. Today, artificial intelligence has progressed to the point where it can convincingly mimic someone's voice. I'll demonstrate. Here's a clip of Darren from his Facebook profile. Have a listen.
Very much like the diverse crowd that shared the dance floor and tuned into the Electric Circus right across the country. A special connection that, as you can see, continues to this day. Here in Toronto, I'm Darren Maharaj for Zoomer News.
With just a few seconds of audio from that clip, AI was able to generate this.
Grandma, it's Darren. I really messed up and I'm in a lot of trouble. Please don't ask any questions. What, can you help me out? I need $500.
Now imagine you were on the receiving end of a call from a loved one in distress. What would you do? Scammers are doing this to con people out of significant sums of money by making the scheme seem more realistic than ever before. And just how ubiquitous is this? Are AI voice cloning scams the next frontier for fraudsters?
It is enormously concerning because these, deep fakes, people impersonating others through AI, and how would you even know about it? That's the problem. How are you alerted to the fact that this is taking place, assuming your identity, taking all kinds of actions like the ones you just heard of, requesting money frantically from a grandparent or parent? We have to be so on the alert. And this goes back to who's going to be on the alert. Consumers can't be aware of how to address these issues. It's individuals who create these programs. I always say you've got to be proactive up front. My Privacy by Design was all about trying to prevent these privacy harms from arising. So I'm telling companies and governments and anyone who uses technology, get up front, make sure that the walls are up in terms of preventing access to this data. And encryption is a huge, very important feature that people have to learn more about.
But if you think about it, the grandparent scam, the romance scam, it's not that they've evolved necessarily. They're just kind of on steroids now because they're so much more convincing. Is that the case, Detective?
AI is certainly the next frontier in regards to fraud. It's being utilized primarily in things like investment frauds with deepfakes, celebrities, and things like that. Certainly the potential is there for grandparent scams, but we don't think it's as prevalent. And again, it's really difficult to determine because, I mean, the victim is going to say it sounded just like my grandson. We know that these fraudsters call number after number after number after number, so it would really bog them down to have a specific voice for each phone call. But even having said that, people need to be aware that even if it is their son's voice, or their grandson's voice, they have to think about it, slow everything down, and just start asking questions. Does this make sense? Are the police going to come to my door and ask for an envelope full of cash? Whether it's their grandson or not, you have to slow it down, hang up the phone, and call people, talk to people. They're going to tell you not to. These are all red flags. So whether it's the voice or not, there's red flags that come along with that call that people really have to start listening to.
That's really good advice. Carmi, can you tell me, what is a deep fake and why would it be used? Just how widespread is it today?
So a deepfake is an AI-generated version of the truth. So what it essentially does is it trains on data that's out there. So in this example with Darren, it actually used video of him to create an audio clip. And so if you've ever posted a video to YouTube or any other platform, someone could go to that, use it to train an audio and create that deepfake audio that sounds just like you. As time goes on, that technology is getting better. So while we've always said lean in a little bit, listen for slight sort of hesitations, it's not as flowy as it should be. It sounds a little bit off. The tone is a little bit not quite there. Over time, that technology is getting better. The fidelity is improving. So now even leaning in isn't going to be able to tell us that isn't real. And so, what we do in our house is we have that conversation around the kitchen table with our kids. We have a code word. And so as Detective Coffey says, very, very rightly so, get off the phone and make sure that you're able to connect directly with that family member to bear out the fact that they are in fact okay. But by having that code word, having that conversation up front, you are primed before that phone rings to understand and accept that, yeah, this is a deep fake. Just because I'm hearing it doesn't mean that I should believe it.
As Carmi mentioned, sometimes a lot of these high-tech crimes have really low-tech solutions. Having that code word or secret phrase that only you and your loved ones know, and ensuring that that actually gets said before you make any transfer of funds, hitting that pause button, taking a breather. And I think kind of these low-tech solutions is really the only way to go. It's clear that the law has not caught up to the technology. We are seeing new legislation in Canada when it comes to the regulation of online harms and artificial intelligence. But right now, it's a bill. It's not law. It's going to take a while. And by that time, my fear is that technology is, again, going to outpace regulation and the law.
I'll give the final word to you on this one, Amanda. And just as far as prevention in particular, how to protect yourself from falling victim to something like this.
Yeah, I think regarding something like this, I mean, while it's happening, which I think is obviously very difficult to do, but if possible, text the person that is calling you. I would say it's quite difficult to do, but if you can limit, for example, like your voice online, if possible, especially if you're, not a public figure, or, if you're just on Facebook kind of thing, you don't have to just display everything or distribute all of your information if you don't want to. You don't have to provide it. And then I would also say, caller ID is nice. You don't have to pick up every phone call.
Yeah.
As well.
Good point. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We have a lot more to cover on the other side. Stay with us. Biometric security systems have seen a boom in recent years. Think fingerprint scanners, facial recognition tech, and iris scanners. They're unlocking smartphones to automating border controls. But here's the thing. As this tech spreads, some cybersecurity experts are getting concerned about how safe our biometric data really is and the risk of it being compromised. I mean, imagine if AI gets so advanced, Anne, that deepfake audio or video could actually hack into our security systems. Is this a real possibility?
it is appalling and frightening. Facial recognition, for example, is extremely revealing, but it's often inaccurate. In the UK, for example, they've been using facial recognition publicly for many, many years. And they've also found that 83% of the matches are inaccurate. They say you're so and so and you're not. I mean, can you imagine living with that kind of inaccuracy? They do that. So imagine with the deep fakes, what can transpire in terms of gaining unauthorized access to your data. It's spread everywhere online. You have no control over it. These are the concerns that are arising. Privacy is all about control, personal control over the use and disclosure of your personal information. Biometric data, like facial recognition, is extremely harmful. So we have to devise ways to prevent the unauthorized use of facial recognition and other biometric measures.
But where is that information being collected, Carmi?
Yeah, it's being collected everywhere. I mean, just recently at the University of Waterloo, students who were using vending machines just happened to discover by accident, because there was an error message on the screen, that their vending machines were taking imagery of them using it for facial recognition. That touched off a firestorm. They're taking those vending machines out, but it illustrates the fact that when we're out and about in public, we often don't have control about where those cameras are, where those devices are, who's collecting that information on us, and where it's going and what purposes it's being used for. So we've reached a point where we do need better regulation that holds companies of all types and stripes and in every sector to greater account, to ensure that they aren't abusing the technology, that they aren't using it under the cover of night, that they're being upfront about it. This is what I'm collecting. This is what I'm using it for. Do you consent? Allowing us that opportunity. That isn't the case now. We're going to continue to have scenarios like this where we just want to go shopping, yet for whatever reason, our information is being collected against our will. We never even had an opportunity to consent, which to me is just unconscionable.
Do we not have rights over our own biometric data, Ritesh?
We do. We have a reasonable expectation of privacy in certain situations. I think when it comes to having meaningful consent, so we got to think about it this way. What is reasonable? I think if I walk into a mall and there is cameras everywhere, I think what's reasonable is they're collecting images and videos for CCTV and security related purposes, public safety purposes. What I don't want is using facial recognition to be tracking me around the mall, seeing which stores I'm going into, how long I'm spending. Now, I get that there is commercial value in some of this stuff, and there are ways of doing it safely by anonymizing data, doing it on what we call the edge, where the analysis is done on the camera system. It doesn't get stored in the cloud in plain image or text. Very complex.
You know of?
Well, that we know of. Yeah, very complex algorithms. We call it hashing the information. So there is some technical terms there. But I think it comes down to what is reasonable. I think transparency is important. So I have a choice whether I want to be subject to that element of surveillance. And if you fail to disclose and it's unreasonable, then there are mechanisms. I can file a complaint to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner. There's civil actions that we've seen as well. And there are options, but it's time consuming and expensive.
Are there any specific scams or frauds right now that are currently exploiting someone's biometric data, Detective?
Biometric data, I'm unsure. I mean, when we talk about, again, going back to deep fakes, though, the most prevalent fraud there is today, the most damaging in terms of monetary loss, is investment fraud. And that is people going online and responding to Elon Musk saying, invest in this product and you'll make millions. If you don't, I'll give you a Tesla. So AI is, I'm somewhat of a pessimist, where I realize that with every advancement of technology, the criminals are always at the forefront of it. They just are. We're waiting for legislation to respond to it. Criminals don't have to respond to wait for it. They can take it immediately and manipulate it to their own good.
And is there recourse for people whose biometric data has been compromised?
You can file a complaint, of course, with the Privacy Commissioner. It depends on if it's private sector. In Ontario, Canada, for example, we don't have private sector privacy legislation. So you have to file a complaint with the federal commissioner. And it just goes on and on. And the reality of something happening that is going to restore your privacy in that area is, I'm afraid to say, is remote. So you have to be extremely careful up front. If you can prevent the collection of your biometric data, ideally, that's the best route. But the solutions in terms of how we investigate and what do we do about it, there's a long road ahead.
You know, Carmi, we were talking about frauds and scams potentially exploiting this data, but what are the types of websites that people might be vulnerable on, for example? Like, what types of websites would try to exploit this information?
Well, I mean, investment scams are usually the first one. So anything that offers something that feels too good to be true, that's a site or a resource that I would be very wary of and I would avoid. I would also never engage with a website on a touchscreen device. I would wait until I get back to a regular computer, a desktop or laptop computer, so I could use my mouse, hover over the address, hover over the links that are on it to make sure that they are and feel legitimate. And I think then also we need to sort of ask ourselves the question, before we sign into something, is what I'm getting back worth the information that I'm about to share here? Because in many cases, that ROI, or return on investment, simply isn't worth it. We're giving up too much in exchange for it. And then even if, as Ritesh says, we do need better laws. They are on the way, but they're not here yet. Let's fast forward a couple of years. Let's assume all of these laws do become enacted, receive royal assent. We're still not fully protected because in many cases, the actors who are collecting this data, who are running those websites, who are engineering these scams, they're not located in Canada. They're global operators. And so in many cases, the data is going to cross international borders. It'll be subject to international prosecution, which may or may not play out. So even if we have the best laws here in Canada, this is a global issue. We do not have global legislation. We still need to be vigilant on our own. We still need to be that much more careful about who we share with, who we interact with. And if that little antenna is going up on the back of our head and it just doesn't feel right, maybe we should back away.
And that is the single biggest issue that law enforcement and governments are dealing with when you kind of break it down into two categories. The idea of jurisdiction, the fact that the data can be located anywhere. So it's not just a simple production order. They got to go through what are called MLAT treaties, which is long and cumbersome. And the second one is attribution. Okay, I have an IP address. It comes back to some country somewhere in the world. I got to put somebody behind that computer. It's a long, drawn-out process. All the more reason that we have to be more proactive, because this is long, it's expensive, and it's extremely time-consuming.
Yeah, and the other factor that is increasing the profit and the difficulty for police is the overwhelming use of cryptocurrency. The money is not, we can't track cryptocurrency through the banks and stuff like that. So, and when it's gone instantly, and it's across the globe.
All right, we need to take a quick break. When we come back, the top scams you need to watch out for this year next. Welcome back. According to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, Canadians lost a total of $567 million due to fraud last year, an increase of $37 million from 2022 and $187 million since 2021. Meanwhile, an Ipsos poll published last February found that 43% of Canadians have been the victim of a fraud or scam in their lifetime. With such alarming statistics, it does beg the question, what are the most common scams happening right now? Carmi, let's get into it. What would you say are the biggest scams people should watch out for in 2024?
I think the number one is either phishing or spear phishing, and chances are we already have some of these messages sitting in our inboxes, whether it's email, text message, social media, direct messaging. It's a message from someone pretending to be someone else, designed to get you to click on something, which of course gets you into trouble. Spear phishing is a version of phishing which is very targeted. It uses all of that personal information to make it look even more legitimate, more targeted. They'll use your name. It looks like it comes from someone who you probably should be interacting with, but you absolutely shouldn't. There's the general category of malware, which is once you click on something, you're now infected. It could be ransomware. It could be an identity theft attack that simply lifts your contact information off of your device. Either way, you've clicked on the wrong thing and now you're in trouble. There's the AI cloning scams that we talked about previously. So it could be audio that sort of uses an audio clip to train itself and make it sound like someone who you know and love, or it can increasingly be video. The technology is good enough to create frightening looking deepfake videos that look exactly like someone who you know, convince you that you should be responding to whatever they're asking you to. There are also those QR codes that we see when we're out and about. You're at a restaurant and they don't have menus, so you scan the QR code to see the menu. Increasingly, we're seeing intercepts of those QR codes in public spaces and on websites and other apps and digital resources. So be very careful about the QR codes that you interact with. In many cases, I know there's some people I don't interact with them at all for exactly that reason, just too much risk. There's also remote access scams. So you need tech support for your device. Of course, you're not communicating with tech support. You're communicating with a scammer. Once you give them access to your device, ostensibly for them to take it over and fix the problem, they're not fixing the problem. They're in fact stealing you blind or stealing your identity or whatever else it is that they do. And then finally, take a look at marketplace as well as romance scams. And they kind of fit into a similar category. You want to buy something on social media, Facebook Marketplace, or you're using a dating app and you're interacting with someone. In both cases, they pretend to be someone they're not. In one case, they sell you something that they're never going to deliver and take your money. In another case, they steal your heart. But either way, it's the same vector, same end result. You've been had.
I was this close to falling victim to the tech support scam. Sure enough, I got to chatting with somebody because there was something wrong with my computer. One thing led to the next. Before I knew it, they'd pulled up a page. They told me all these guys were on my computer, fraudsters stealing my information. I'm on the phone with this guy. He's telling me, I can't help you out until you send me this money. And I was this close because he scared me. And he instilled fear, detective. And it can seem so real. And in a split second, it happens.
Yeah, it only takes that split second. And like Carmi said, how many of us have received text messages already today? It happens on a daily basis. Text messages, emails, every single day. You almost have to live, and it's really sad to say, you almost have to live in this state of constant vigilance and constant suspicion, I don't want to use the word paranoia, but everything that comes into your device, you have to look at it with a skeptical eye. And the key to that is being aware that that fraudsters are out there and that we're all being targeted. The stats you cited earlier, the 562 million Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, I hate to tell everybody, that does not include Toronto's numbers. So from May 1st until December 31st last year, an 8-year period, we had $200 million in Toronto alone. This year, we're on pace for almost 400 million.
Yeah.
Those numbers are not included in Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre.
Yeah.
So we are all victims. We're all targeted on a daily basis. And it only takes that split second of being tired or being, oh, that sounds good, or that looks good, of clicking. You have to have that mindset that everything that comes in unsolicited is to be touched with a 10-foot pole.
It's true, Anne. Such a small percentage of cases are actually even reported. The numbers are probably much greater than what I cited.
Unfortunately, that's probably the reality. And as we just heard, we have to be vigilant. We have to be so aware of what's coming into our emails, etc. If you don't recognize that, it looks some odd, it looks interesting, but you're not sure, delete. You know, if it's a contact of yours, someone that you trust, they'll contact you again, either by email or phone or something. But you have to be, I hate to say it, very distrustful in this world of online activities, because the hackers are brilliant and they have ways of getting into you to get you to be convinced that you should open up these emails, etc. Don't do it. Be resistant.
Ritesh, I'll ask you, as far as legal recourse, particularly with investment scams and that sort of thing, is there always a path to seeking recourse when money is lost?
It depends how the money's lost. I'm sure the detective will tell you just how difficult it is to recover funds once they leave. The thing about crypto is it's anonymous by and decentralized by its design. So to actually be able to piece it together, it requires highly sophisticated technology, highly sophisticated investigators with the tool sets and skill sets. it is very difficult. So I kind of building on what my fellow panelists have stated, the zero trust protocol is what I call it. Go with the assumption that it is fraudulent. We're even seeing with phishing scams, now we're seeing an increase in what we call spoofing, where you can mirror certain email addresses and numbers. So you got to go low tech. You know, hit that pause button, validate and verify, because putting the toothpaste back in the tube is just not possible.
Yeah. All right. Stay right there. When we come back, we'll break down the steps to take if you do find yourself caught in a scam, right here on theZoomer. Welcome back. If you're not careful, the hours after a scam can lead to more money lost or stress. So let's talk about what to do and avoid in those crucial moments after being scammed. Carmi, I'll start with you. How does someone prevent additional damage? What steps should they take?
Well, the first thing you want to do is secure not only the account that has been compromised, but other accounts. In many cases, if they have your information, they're going to use something called credential stuffing to target other accounts like it. If you're using the same password across multiple systems, which many people unfortunately do, start changing your passwords across all of the other services and apps and platforms that you're using. Lock them down. Turn on all of the features, the security features that are available to you. Two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, encryption. In many cases, they're available, but we don't use them, and we become more vulnerable because of that. So the awareness is important, but also making it so that each account is separate and distinct from the others with a unique password and other features on top of it is absolutely crucial. And I would look around the room. Most of us probably aren't doing that right now.
Detective, what about for people that want to reach out for help but may feel embarrassed?
Well, there's certainly a large amount of that. Fraud comes with shame and embarrassment, and that's what accounts for the estimate of 5 to 10% of all frauds are reported. What I tell them is the fraudsters are professionals. This is their job. They're really, really, really good at it, and it's not an indication of how smart you are or how tech savvy you are if you become a victim. We all become a victim. I've been a victim. I'll become a victim again. So people just need to realize that these are professionals out there. That is their job. Put the embarrassment aside. They're certainly not going to be judged on our end. They need to report it to police so we know what's happening out there.
The other thing, Anne, is fraudsters, I've heard of fraudsters buying like search ads for people that have become victims of scams. How do we dodge those?
And yeah, they're going after the victims again and again. Yeah. It is appalling. And if you have sites like that, I would urge you, report it to the Privacy Commissioner of Ontario, Federal Privacy Commissioner, all of the provinces have commissioners. Go to the police, report so that these things can be investigated. Is it real? Is it fake? Are they just trying to gain access to your data? We have to be vigilant in terms of these areas and bringing them to light so that other people don't also suffer the same consequences we may have.
Actually, that's a good point, Detective. I'll ask you, as far as reporting, Anne mentioned the Privacy Commissioner. Who should they contact? Local police, provincial police? Is there a fraud department? What's the right authority? Yeah,
so in Toronto, in most municipalities, you report it to your local police. Toronto, however, we only accept fraud reports when there's a financial loss. So it's not a phishing attempt in our phone. If you've lost money, you report it to Toronto Police, 808-2222. If there's no loss, you can also report it to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, who are the federal agency that tracks frauds across the country. But it's really, really, really important to report it so we can track trends, so we know what's going on out there.
But there is another component of this as well, and some fantastic resources. So we have the police service, we have the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, but we also have the CRTC when it comes to certain type of spam in particular. So some of these phishing scams, some of these text messages that you may get. There is a piece of legislation called the Canadian Anti-Spam Legislation, and you could literally forward these spam messages to the government, to the CRTC in particular, and they do have tremendous powers, and they can investigate. But I think the misstep or the worst thing to do is not do anything at all, because A, you've been victimized, but it's additional people are going to be victimized or re-victimized as these scams start to develop. So you'll be able to hopefully stop them and do good for the community.
One thing I would say as well is once identity theft has happened to you, if you've been proactive and have a service, something like InfoDefender or ZooMer InfoDefender, really there's a really good, the restoration process is actually one of the more important parts of that service because it can happen to you. And if it does happen to you, you don't want to be the person calling 12 different banks and 15 people and, you know, the government, like, you know, whoever it is. So these types of products, and especially with InfoDefender, our restoration service is really where we really win on the product, and we do such a good job of really helping customers and helping people restore their identity. So the monitoring, the credit alert, the credit score, that's all great, and it's all wonderful to have, but really if you're compromised, you want that restoration piece.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear from firsthand accounts of people from our audience next. Welcome back, folks. Now it's your turn. We're opening the floor to your stories and questions and kicking it off with Paul. Paul, tell us about your personal experience with fraud.
Well, I had some photographic studio equipment listed on Kijiji, and at one point I got a text from somebody saying that they would like to buy it. I received another just through text messages about they were going to have a courier pick it up because there were several boxes, so it seemed to make some sense. I received a courier check from Bank of Nova Scotia. I put that on the ATM. Later that day, the person texted me saying, oh, there's some problems with the courier. We're having some issues. Could you e-transfer me a portion of this? You keep whatever you have your cost does, and they're back, which I did. And at that point, they disappeared. And what I've been listening to you, sir, is about patience. I should have let the check clear first before I had gone ahead and done anything like that. So what I was really doing was giving them my money, not their own money back. And that was my mistake.
Oh, no.
So I haven't, it was a couple of $1,000s. And the other thing is, I guess in some ways, you think of the scams as being tens, millions of dollars. And it was such a small amount. It just, again, you get involved too close to these and you don't realize that they're probably working on volume more than.
Wow.
And that's the red flag in that is whenever they're asking for money to be sent to them directly, that's always where everything needs to slow down. And
yes.
But yeah, this is, and you were preyed upon. They didn't find you accidentally. They went to that site. They see people selling things for however thousands, hundreds of dollars. Sometimes it's only hundreds of dollars.
Yes.
They go there looking for you, to prey upon you. They're professionals, they know what they're doing. And like you said, a couple thousand from you, which is still a lot of money.
Oh, definitely.
I don't want to lose a couple $1,000s. A couple thousand from you, a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there. You know, a day's work. How much money do we make in a day? They're making thousands upon thousands, just on people as yourself.
Yes, yeah. I agree.
And they preyed on your kindness.
Yes, and also my trust of, I had been on, you talked about what people can see from there, like when they go to Kijiji, they can say, oh, I've been on there for so many years and I've got maybe a 5-star rating, and they think, okay, he's trusting of what's on Kijiji, and I was, because I'd had good experiences of it in the past. So I got a little bit too trusting in myself of the services. And I've learned my lesson from that.
Well, I imagine it could be very violating to feel that way. So thank you for sharing your story, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Paul, welcome to the roundtable.
Thank you.
What's your question?
So regarding security programs that are installed, i.e. Norton, is it necessary to subscribe to one online as well as program that's purchased in a retail store?
Got it, got it. Carmi?
An online service is more likely to receive updates, security patches, and fixes sooner than, say, a standalone piece of software. It's increasingly difficult to buy boxes of software in store. Increasingly, we subscribe to it. But the problem here is not that these things aren't secure. They, in fact, are. If it makes you feel better to add to your security toolkit, then by all means do so. The problem is many people subscribe to them or install them and then assume that just because they have that, they don't have to be careful in the other aspects of their online life. They think that they're somehow more protected than they are, which can lead to behaviors that can get us into trouble. So do be aware that it's not a 100% solution. There are no magic solutions here. It's one among many, and you cannot afford to let your guard down even after you've subscribed to it, installed it, and kept it updated. There are many more sort of layers of security that fit your overall security strategy.
Ritesh, do you have anything to add?
Well, I think that it's a combination, right? It's a tool in your toolbox. So you got to think about the different preventative measures that you've put in place. I would be looking at, are you using VPNs to encrypt your online traffic? Those proper cybersecurity protocols of enabling multi-factor authentication and having those account alerts. There is no single solution. I think it's a combination of different tools that will keep you safe online.
What is a VPN?
A VPN is a virtual private network, and what it does is it essentially encrypts and changes your IP address, adding another layer of protection when you're online. But sometimes, again, a lot of these high-tech crimes, low-tech solutions, don't recycle those passwords. And I use separate email addresses for my personal life, my professional life, and online shopping. Don't use one email address. Email addresses are free to create, and if they get compromised, at least your entire life, your digital life doesn't come to a standstill.
And if I may add, if that's possible, what I have found is when you declare your interest in privacy and security, at the time that you're actually in an actual physical store or online, you're going to a new website or a new activity, you're going to purchase something or do something, I always lead with declaring my strong need for privacy and security. And then often the response I get back is, oh, you care about privacy. Oh, here's what we can do. We can do this, we can do that. All of a sudden, it increases the measures that they bring to you, that are available to you, that most people don't care about. So always lead with your interest in preserving your privacy and security, and you'll be surprised at how much you'll get back.
And before we go, remember this too, knowledge is power. I hope we didn't scare you too much, but rather equipped you with the tools to tackle frauds and scams head on. That's all for us tonight. To get in touch, send us an email at comments@thezoomer.com. As always, thank you to my panel and to you at home watching. For now, it's time to zoom out.